Everybody, and welcome to the Family Matters interview series. Thank you so much for choosing to join the presentation, and we're so happy to have you here with us tonight. Just a couple reminders that everybody will be in listen-only mode for tonight's webinar. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them into the chat box along with your email address, and somebody will respond to you within 2 to 3 business days. We are pleased to have Kevin Jameson joining us tonight to talk about the caregiver's journey, barriers and challenges that caregivers face when caring for a loved one with cognitive impairment and/or dementia. Kevin is the founder and volunteer president and chairman of the Dementia Society of America. Kevin actually has a personal story and connection to dementia. His first wife, Jenny, who he was with for 32 years, died from dementia. So he likes to say that he leads the fight against all forms of dementia with thoughts, words, and deeds. In 2016, Jameson was awarded a doctorate of public service for his life's work by his alma mater. His establishment of the Dementia Society is a mission in the making. And Mr. Jameson also serves on the board of the Central Bucks Chamber of Commerce. And joining Kevin is Lynn Young. She is the Vice President of Operations at Mansbach Health Tools. So Kevin and Lynn, without further ado, I will turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Family Matters session. Today, we're joined by Kevin Jameson, the President and Chairman of Dementia Society of America. Kevin, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Kevin, tell our family members a little bit about your background and I know your own experience as a caregiver.
Sure. So my background is not, I do run the nonprofit Dementia Society of America today. As a volunteer, I run it. But my whole world wasn't, running a nonprofit or volunteerism necessarily, although I was always a member and a volunteer for a lot of different things. But over the course of time, I had been in sales and marketing for most of my career. And my wife started to express some things that didn't match up to her personality. And I kind of put it to the side and just ignored it for a little while, but it became very apparent after a year or so that maybe there was something going on, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And so we actually were going to a marriage counselor because we were having marital difficulties as a result of some of these things. And she pulled me aside and said, Kevin, I think there is something going on with Jenny, and I don't know what it is. And, but it's not because she doesn't love you or that you don't have a good relationship. There's something else going on. And one night, actually, we go out to dinner at an Indian restaurant that we'd been to before. And we went in, I said hello to the hostess by name. And Jenny turned to me and said, how do you know her? And I said, well, from the last time we were here, I remember her name. Jenny says, I've never been here before. What are you talking about? And I said, no, we were here like last month. I mean, we've been here before. And that's how I met the hostess, and her name. I remembered her name. It was unusual. And she goes, well, I've never been here before. You must have been here with another woman. And that at that moment, I knew that there was an issue. Well, I went as far as, digging out credit card receipts and showing them to her, and it just didn't matter. We had not been there in her mind. So I knew that there was something else going on, and it was cognitive. And so I went to our primary care doctor, which we shared, and I said to them, I said to the doctor, I said, I think there's an issue here with Jenny, and we need to check it out. And this went on for a while because, for the most part, Jenny seemed, quote unquote, normal to everybody, that nothing much had changed. But living with her, I saw that there was a huge difference. And it was a significant enough difference that I started to write down what would happen. So if she said something or she did something that was just out of the ordinary, I would start to make notes about it. And
It's a
that
great
led to,
strategy.
yeah, that just, I was able to present them to the doctor then and say, hey, doc, we shared a doc. It was like, hey, doc, this is what I'm seeing with Ginny. Here's a letter, in print from me to you. You're on notice and you need to really take this seriously. And at that point, the doctor did, and he got us hooked up with a psychiatrist. And that wasn't, we did that. And a lot of people go through that, right? They see a psychiatrist, but it's not a psychiatric issue, so to speak, right? So then I pushed, and we got to see a neurologist, and it was somebody that we knew actually in town. He, did the normal routine, but he said that, and again, I was pushing him. This is much bigger than just growing older. And she finally was admitted to a local university setting where we got the greatest workup. And at that time, and that took almost a year, because you do a neuropsych exam and then you have to come back and do it again. And then they have to look at this, brain scans and some of the other things. And this is around 20 years ago. And so a lot of the tests weren't available in terms of PET scans, and they weren't doing, spinal taps, and they weren't doing a lot of things. So we didn't really know. And they still didn't know at that time what was the cause behind her dementia. But she had an auto accident. She'd had a number of different things and assaults to her brain. And that all came together kind of in this, situation that ultimately it was dementia as a diagnosis, but without a specific, it could be Alzheimer's, it could be, but we're not sure. We don't know.
Right.
And that led me ultimately over time, to get back to your question, how did I get here? Ginny had a trajectory of care. We cared for her in the home. She moved ultimately to a dementia care setting, then into skilled nursing, and then into hospice. And when she entered that last year of her life in hospice is when I decided to retire from my corporate career, and just totally focus on her and also helping other families. And that's really what was the genesis of the Dementia Society, because there wasn't a Dementia Society, and I felt there needed to be a Dementia Society. So we started the Dementia Society in 2013, and have really been on a hockey stick of growth in terms of a trajectory. And we're helping, thousands and thousands of individuals and families now.
Right. I'm sure your story resonates with a lot of family members. They've probably had similar journeys where they've tried, bringing this to someone's attention and really had to advocate and push to get the testing and the confirmation of the diagnosis, and then kind of figuring out next steps. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who can relate to your journey and the way it turned out. And I'm really interested in hearing more about the Dementia Society of America. I know that your model is that you use 100% volunteers. And can you tell me a little bit about how, your team is pulled together, where the volunteers come from, and then, how you've created sort of this network of support for caregivers?
Yeah, I understand. Well, first of all, we're not really 100% volunteer. I mean, in the first 6-7 years of our existence, we were all volunteers. We had no employees. In fact, in the first 8 years of our existence, we had no employees, and we just entered our 8 years and about 6 months right now. So we have begun, as of 2022, this year, we do have a few part-time employees, but in terms of being volunteer driven, and that is from the top. So I'm a volunteer, our vice president, our treasurer, our secretary, our executive vice president, they're all volunteers. And all the advisors are volunteers, all the board members are volunteers. So we're definitely volunteer driven. But, we've grown to the point where we need, certain staff, to help us execute on our mission. So definitely, I can't say 100% volunteer anymore, but I definitely can say we're volunteer driven. So that's an important distinction for me, because there are a lot of organizations, good organizations, but they have an overhead of executive salaries, and we don't have that. So in a lot of respects, we've been able to plow what might have been paid to me, in my heyday. We've plowed that back into the organization, so that, I don't have to get paid and others don't have to get paid at an executive level. And so all the other volunteers are spread out throughout the country. So our advisors are spread out throughout the country, and a number of board members are elsewhere in the country. And really, we are always looking for volunteers, and we want people that are living with dementia to be volunteers, as well as people that have an experience of being a caregiver as a volunteer. I think it's important for you to have that experience, either the lived experience of having a type of dementia, or having cared for somebody or been a care partner to somebody that has lived that experience, because then you really, really understand it. And, we ask of our volunteers that they basically further our mission, and that is get the word out, right? Talk to other people, bring our brochures to care communities, to doctors, to attorneys, to long-term care communities, continuing care, what they call CCRCs, kind of continuing care retirement communities. Anywhere that we can get our information out in front of people, that's what we're trying to do.
I'm sure those folks are very invested in your mission, since they've experienced it, and they're not working for a salary. They're doing this because they believe in the work. So that's a great team behind you to get your mission out into the world.
Right.
So I know part of what you do is you offer educational resources. What type, and you mentioned brochures, what types of information is in those educational resources? What could people expect to find if they went to your website and were looking for some additional information for themselves or on behalf of someone?
Okay, so I mean, Lynn, there's a certain kind of demographic for the people that are coming to us. It's probably 45 years of age and older, although we have a lot of younger people who are concerned about their grandparents, and so they're looking up information about them. So we do have kind of a young set of demographics as well. But clearly it starts around 45 or 50 years old. People are then in that sandwich generation, right? They have an older adult that they're caring about or caring for, or they just are aware of that, it's maybe their parent, maybe it's an aunt, uncle, whatever, and they may have kids. So they're living this sandwich generation, and they need resources, and the internet is such a big space. You can kind of get overwhelmed with everything that's out there. And so what we're trying to do is provide very precise, targeted information to individuals and families that's simple, easy to read. We have big font, the size of our letters on our website are large. In fact, our website people are like, why do you want the text so big? Like, well, I want to be able to read it without my glasses. And that's no different, right? A lot of people are on phones looking at the website while they look at TV. And so we want people to have information in chunks, because I think if you throw too much at them, they're just going to say, I can't deal with it. But so we give them short, chunked information that they can always go deeper with us. So we're always linking to other things. But when they come to the Dementia Society, most people are coming to understand what is dementia. And we try to explain that right up front, that dementia is not a disease. That's a really important concept to understand. And most, even medical professionals, really don't spend a lot of time arguing with their patients about that term. If somebody says, the word dementia and the word disease together, a lot of people will just accept that. But we don't. What we're about is communicating clearly, properly, and accurately, and respectfully, that dementia is a syndrome, and it distinguishes itself from a specific disease. So as a syndrome, it's kind of an umbrella. And then you have various causes that kind of go underneath that syndrome of dementia. Dementia is the outward expression of the cognitive impairment. It's the inability to do your activities of daily living, to have word finding issues and executive planning and thinking skills. All of those things are the dementia that we see. But underlying that, the cause of the dementia can be multifactorial. In other words, it might be Alzheimer's disease. It might be vascular or cerebrovascular disease. It might be Lewy body dementia disease. It might be frontotemporal dementia or frontotemporal degeneration, depending on who's talking about it. It might be normal pressure hydrocephalus. It might be something as simple as depression that's masquerading as a dementia or a cognitive impairment. So we want people to understand that there's this huge spectrum of conditions and causes and disorders under the umbrella. And it is important to determine to the best of your ability what the cause is, for a variety of reasons. It might inform you about medications that are available. It might inform you about genetic issues, such as familial causes of dementia that you want to be aware of in your family. All of those come into play when you start to understand exactly what the cause is. So it's important for us to get people to acknowledge that, understand it, and then dig deeper, not just accept a broad dementia label or a broad Alzheimer's label. And bear in mind that somebody can actually have a disease like Alzheimer's in their brain tissue, but not express dementia. Most people are totally unaware of that. And you say to yourself, what are you talking about, Kevin? The reality is that the pathological changes, what we call the amyloid and the tau plaque, these tangles in the plaque, right? You've heard of plaques and tangles. Those plaques and tangles, those pathologies in the brain exist to some degree in all of us. It's just a matter of to what degree they exist. But even those with what we would call advanced Alzheimer's pathology, when they look at their brains upon death, there's a significant percentage, not a majority, but in the spectrum of, and they don't know the exact numbers, but let's just say 5 to 10% of people that they look at and they go, they have the pathology of an Alzheimer's, but they don't express the dementia. They don't have the cognitive impairment. There was a study called the Nun study, which showed this, and it's an ongoing study even today. And everybody who's listening or watching can just type in Nun study dementia, and you'll learn all about it. It's amazing that people can actually have the pathology and not express it. And so that opens up a whole nother realm of questions about brain health, but that's for another day.
Absolutely. I know that, when people receive this diagnosis, as you just mentioned, there's a lot of information to sort through, whether it's the diagnosis itself, there's different levels of care, there's different types of resources you can access to help your loved one. It really is quite a journey to just sort of navigate this path and be able to find the resources you need to build your own awareness and understanding, and then to be that advocate for your loved one. And I know you connect with a lot of family members, a lot of folks who may have this diagnosis, who might be struggling, who might be on that journey at different places along the way. Mm-hmm. What are some of the most frequent barriers or challenges in your experience that these folks are facing, whether it's the person with dementia or the family member or caregiver who's supporting them? What do they verbalize to you are some of the biggest barriers along this journey?
Yes, it's a good question. Of course, you only ask good questions, Lynn, so let me just say that. But, fear is a big one, fear and denial. And, a lot of people are living in a state of denial. So why is that? It's because they fear the answer, really. They don't really want to accept what's going on. So there's a lot of stigma and taboo around the subject of dementias. And we're really out to change that. We're really out to kind of shout it from the mountaintops that it's not something to be fearful of. It's something to work through. And I think we are where cancer was maybe 40 or 50 years ago, where people would talk about the C word, right? And now it's the D word. So today you can walk into a supermarket and buy milk with a cancer ribbon on it. You can buy hats and you can buy motorcycles and garbage cans that are all pink in order to kind of show people that you're aware about cancers of various kinds. Well, I think the same is true, and it's happening today with dementia. And I think we're part of the reason why that's happening. I mean, we are really out there in the public sphere. We talk directly to the public. We're not so much talking to the medical establishment, although that's part of what we do, but our real emphasis is on the consumer of the information, the common person in the field, so to speak. And it's this fear of the unknown, and it's almost a fear of an unwillingness to accept that somebody that you love, even if it's yourself, is not able to process information as you once did. When you are looking at something and you cannot figure out a word, when you cannot add something together, when you cannot get back to your home because you're out driving and you've been lost, that is fear. It's anxiety producing. And but we really want people to kind of relax into it a little bit, not as a total acceptance. You want a little fight in it, but you definitely want to not let that fear control you. So knowledge is really the answer, right? When you're knowledgeable, right? If you listen, I did fire walking. Have you ever walked on fire? So, the first time you prepare for walking on fire, it's an all-day experience. And you have a lot of fear. I mean, you are going to be walking on hot coals, and you're rolling up your pant legs and you're banding together with others to walk across that bed of coals. Well, once you actually get across, and that you've been able to get across, you want to do it again because you're no longer fearful. You have knowledge that you've gotten across and you can get across again. And I think that it's the same with dementia or anything in life. When you know more about it, you can do more about it.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to mention here, we have something called the Big Umbrella. And this is a 16-page booklet that basically takes people through what dementia is and isn't. It talks about common causes. It talks about care planning. And this is a booklet that anybody can request from us. And we have hundreds and hundreds of them going out right now. So I would just encourage listeners, and viewers to come to our website and request our package of information through our contact form.
Absolutely. That looks like a great resource. And I know we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask, everything you've described, I can imagine that those scenarios are scary for families, that can be overwhelming, very frustrating if someone can't communicate their needs. I imagine there's a good bit of burnout among caregivers who are taking on this journey of supporting someone with dementia.
Yes.
What should people be looking for if they have a family member or a friend who's in this caregiver role? How can others support them, and how can those caregivers themselves reach out and get some relief or some resources to make that journey a little bit easier on them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I think number one is not to abandon the person, right? A lot of people are so fearful of dementia that when a friend or a loved one gets or develops dementia over time, they don't want to be around. They leave. You can't reach them. Those are people that are near and dear to people's hearts. It's a shame. So I would say, first of all, step up if you're the friend, neighbor, or loved one, and say, I'm in this to hear you. I want to be there for you. You may not be able to do everything. You may not be local even, but just being able to be an ear for the caregiver as well as an ear for the person living with dementia. You don't have to even say much. You just have to listen. And if you can provide some guidance or insights that the person would find helpful, that's great. But I think, just being present and being in the moment with the person is meaningful. So that's number one. Number two, I think that those that surround the caregiver or the care partner, or even the person living with the dementia themselves, needs to encourage self-care. So, get a massage, right? Have a beautiful meal, laugh, watch comedy, listen to music, go to museums, take a walk, try to find
Taking a
those
few moments for yourself, it sounds like what you're talking about.
Yeah, because your self-care is all important to the person that you're caring about or caring for. So if you're not there mentally and physically, you can't be there for them. So
that makes sense.
It's the old adage when you get in an airplane, and they tell you about the oxygen masks. And if you're with a child, put your oxygen mask on first in order that you be able to help the other person. It doesn't have to be a child, could be anybody that's unable to do it themselves. So it's really, really important. And I'll just tell you briefly, if I had had a heart attack in our home, my wife would have walked right around me. She would have just gone, sat down, watched TV, and not been able to help me. She wouldn't have known where to start. She might have not even known I was in distress. So physical health is important. Mental health is important. Even using a emergency medical device for the people that are the care partners, not necessarily a person with dementia, but the team around them. Anything like that can help you survive in order to thrive, in order to support them.
Oh, that's great advice. Great advice. We're almost out of time, but I do want to make sure we ask this last question. If there's someone out there hearing what you're talking about today, talking about Dementia Society of America, your different resources and tools, all the information you offer, how can they find you? How would they be able to access some of these tools and resources and get connected to you all?
It's super easy. People go to dementiasociety.org, or they call 1-800-DEMENTIA. So it's 1-800-DEMENTIA. Just spell it out on your phone. And so dementiasociety.org or 1-800-DEMENTIA. We're also big on Facebook, have over 130,000 followers on Facebook. We've got a Twitter handle, we've got YouTube channel, we've got
You're everywhere.
Instagram, you name it, we're in LinkedIn. So Dementia Society or Dementia Society of America, that'll get you there.
Okay, great. Well, we thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us today, for giving our families all of this really great information and some of these new resources that can help them on their journey. So we're going to end here and take care. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we'll be wrapping up here. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much, Kevin and Lynn. Right now, we just want to take an opportunity to invite everybody to become a member of the Enrich Brain Health program, if you haven't already, by signing up on our Enrich website, which is enrichvisits.com. And if you're interested in more information from the BCAT Research Center, you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I'll leave those links up there for a second. Again, if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the chat box and somebody will respond to you via email within the next 2 to 3 days. And thank you all again so much for joining us tonight for this episode of Family Matters. And we hope to see you again for our next episode in March, entitled, "What's the Difference Between Independent Living and Assisted Living? Understanding the different levels of care and how to decide which one is right for your family member." I'll go ahead and stay in the room for a couple more minutes just in case anybody has any questions. And otherwise, I hope you guys all have a great night.